Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Family Reflections. I'm your host, Keddy Emmanuel, and on the call with me today, I have someone who will forever be to me, Miss Janey. Miss Janey, can you tell the people hello? Tell them a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Keddy, and hi, everyone. I am Janey Joseph, and I am a counselor by training. Worked at the Vifor Comprehensive Campus B for a period of 7 years, and then I moved over to the District 6 Education Office, where I served as district counselor for another period of about 7 years. Right now, I am the director of gender relations. And previous to being in the school setting and in the counseling setting, I worked with some young people as a youth leader, having served on two National Youth Council executives.
All right. Yeah, and guys, I want to tell you, Miss Janey is one of the few people that would come to mind. What? How do I say this? She's one of the best people, I think, to help me break down this subject and really dive into this. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about conflict management. We want to talk a little bit about managing conflict, right? All of us have been in some sort of argument, some sort of conflict, especially in our relationships, at school, at work. And I think we need to learn how to best deal with these conflicts, right? And I think Ms. Janey can help us with that, right?
Well, I'll do the best that I can. Let's hope that we can manage whatever conflict that we have between ourselves in this conversation, because that's literally the nature of conflict. When you interact with somebody else, there's always the possibility that the conflict will arise.
Right. Yeah. And uh, I don't know. Coming from a personality, I think I'm a relatively laid back, chill personality. I don't really like conflict. But in recent years, I've kind of learned that it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Um,
Absolutely.
and it took a little journey to get there. But yeah, it took a little while to come to the place where I realized, okay, conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing, and realize that, okay, I need to learn how to manage it properly and how to really work through it in a healthy way. All right. But were you about to say something?
Well, I was just agreeing with you that perhaps that's one of the most misunderstood concepts um, that is so common. Conflict is a normal part of everyday living. And we encounter conflict with our own selves. So, fathers with another person.
Right.
And it arises just as a result of us wanting different things, maybe wanting the same thing, and we both can't get it at the same time
Right.
or in the same way.
Right.
um, it involves people. So as long as two people are interacting with each other, there may be that possibility that somebody's going to say something that you do not necessarily interpret in the way that it was intended. There may be a situation where you have something that that person wants and you're not exactly willing to give that up,
Right.
or it may be that the two of you want the same thing but at different times and in different ways. And just because that is something that happens in almost every interaction, it means that conflict happens regularly among regular people
Right.
all the time.
Right. Yeah, and just down that same vein, for me, one of the funniest things is when you'll find people in conflict. I found myself in arguments, going back and forth with somebody, and realizing that we're actually saying the same thing in a
That's
different
right.
way.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And that happens because usually we are so quick to defend our own thinking, our own line, and perhaps even our own needs,
Right.
right?
Right.
That we hardly are in a state where we're seriously listening to the other person unless we make that specific intention. We have an intention to actually listen. We tell ourselves, I have to listen to that person. We make an effort to do so. So sometimes we are in fact saying the same thing, but because we're not saying it in the same way, it comes across to ourselves individually as two entirely different things. But I think one of the reasons why conflict is so badly understood as a useful, even sometimes, thing is because people equate conflict with violence, and that
Mm.
is not the case. Violence is an unhealthy way of trying to deal with conflict.
Yeah.
So conflict is normal and natural. Violence is not normal and natural. Violence is a response to conflict that ends up hurting one or both of the persons in the conflicted situation.
So, and I know we're speaking in terms of individuals, right? But I just while I was listening to you, I thought a little bit about war, right? War is the ultimate violent circumstance, and isn't war itself a complete breakdown in conflict management in terms of countries? Like
There are
if countries
various
mastered
perspectives
conflict
on
management,
that. Uh-huh.
I'm sorry.
I was just thinking that there are various perspectives on that.
Yeah, I'm saying if countries mastered conflict management, would there still be wars? And I know this is just that just came to my head.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there are probably various perspectives on that.
Okay.
Maybe some wars would not happen
Okay.
if persons negotiating with each other had come to a resolution prior to taking the action
Right.
of war, right? However, there are certain wars that may have been necessary to move to another level,
Right.
because it probably was the only form to move to the next level. It was the only decision that needed to have been taken, the actual act of war. I may respond to that very differently if you ask me that another day. However, today it appears to me that there are different ways of looking at this, because but I kind of want to take that back very quickly as well, Kelly, because
I mean, I'm not sure either. Like we're just talking. I'm not sure either. Like we're
it's,
not we're
it's
not going to be changing any foreign policies based on this. you know?
absolutely, absolutely. And you see, the thing about it is, you don't want to appear to be speaking about a global issue
Right.
that is interpreted as a private individual issue,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So if I say some wars are necessary, but I'm speaking about globally in terms of international relations,
Right.
somebody may take this to interpret, well, a war between me and my group of friends and another group of friends might be necessary because it is the
Necessary
only
force.
way of resolving that particular matter. So,
Right.
that, so this is the type of conversation that you have in context.
Right. Right.
You understand what I
Okay.
mean?
All right. Yeah, I get you.
So it's kind of difficult to answer that, with a direct response that you don't have to try to manage.
Okay. So what I'll then say is that I think we'll keep the conflict management on an individual basis, because it begins to morph into something a little different when we're talking about nations, right, and entire countries.
Absolutely, absolutely. It shouldn't, but it kind of does, at
Yeah.
least perhaps when you're talking about it unprepared.
Yeah. Yeah. So, running back a little bit to conflict management, right? Can you walk us a little bit through what that means, right? Back on an individual basis.
Right. So conflict management is this broad term that is used to describe how you deal with conflict
Yeah.
to be able to arrive at a place where you can continue along with your life or that the conflict is resolved. Most people prefer resolution as a means of, the ultimate outcome of managing conflict.
Yeah.
It does not always end in resolution, and it doesn't always have to end in resolution either. So conflict management is broader than just conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is one such outcome, a very uh, not likely outcome, but it can be a likely outcome as well. But an outcome that is more preferred, so
Yeah.
one of the preferred outcomes. So it entails understanding you in the context of the conflictive situation, understanding the other's needs,
Okay.
and arriving at a decision that you take with yourself that will allow you to either resolve that conflict with the other individual or take the decision that removes you from the conflictive situation and returns you to a place of equilibrium or a place of peace.
All right. And guys, let me tell y'all, yeah, just a quick confession. In preparing for this episode, I was talking to Miss Janey a little bit, and initially I wanted to just talk about conflict resolution, right? Because when you think about conflict and you think about, people getting better at handling conflict, for people like me and you, we think about conflict resolution and not necessarily conflict management. And so this whole idea of conflict management is something that is new to me and something that I find very, very interesting. The concept that you do not need to always resolve a conflict, because one of the questions, Ms. Janey, that I was going to ask you is what do you do in a situation where somebody is not open to communication, is not open to coming to the table, is not open to doing and hearing anything from you? How do you resolve that, right? And I can see how the general term of conflict management is much more helpful in a situation like that than conflict resolution, because that then becomes
Absolutely.
impossible.
Because conflict resolution assumes that the other person wants to resolve the conflict as well. In
Okay.
fact, when the other person wants to resolve the conflict and you want to resolve the conflict, you're more likely to get into a situation where you can negotiate or maybe mediate if the negotiation is not healthy or helpful. But there are some people who don't even want to get into mediation. They don't need somebody else there. They just don't want to have it out with you. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And that is surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, understandably more common actually than the idea of people wanting to come around the table. So in situations like that, you need to understand that conflict management starts and ends with you. You don't have control over what the other person says, does, or desires, but you have control over what you say, what you do, and what you desire. Therefore, you need to get to the place where you understand, one, who am I, right? What do I want in that situation? What is my purpose in that situation? What do I have control over in this situation? And what don't I have control over? And ultimately, what do I want? What do I want out of this? right? And what I want out of this is going to determine what I do. And so you choose what you do based on what you really want.
Okay.
And then sometimes that particular choice that you make can be beneficial to you and the other person, but sometimes that choice is just beneficial to you,
Okay.
right? And sometimes the choice is actually beneficial just to the other person, right? But
Yeah.
then you choose based on what your actual outcome, your desired outcome is. And that is a choice that we all have all the time, right? And even when we believe that we did not exercise that choice, we did. Because when I punch somebody else, say for instance, somebody says something insulting to me, and notice I didn't say insults me.
Yeah. Something insultive. Right.
Somebody says something insulting to me, because that's different from
Uh,
somebody insulting me. If
okay.
I say that somebody said something insulting to me, and I say that somebody insults me, I'm telling myself two entirely different things.
Help me unpack that.
Right. So if I say that somebody said something insulting to me, I have removed me from the situation in a sense that the person chooses to use an insultive phrase. They say something insultive. I do not assume that to be mine.
So, okay, I get that. So basically, in one case, you are taking ownership of the action
Absolutely.
that this
So
person,
when I say
yeah.
somebody insults me, I have already accepted that insultive comment that that person has made
Right.
as something that is mine. And so I'm reacting to that. So if I tell myself that somebody has said something insultive to me, I allow that person to still take ownership of that insult. But if I say somebody insults me, I've already taken ownership of that person's insult, right? So let's say, for instance, somebody says something insulting to me, right? I can choose to totally ignore what that person says, depending on who that person is and what my interaction with that person is,
Right.
right? So I'm walking down the street and I'm going to a meeting that starts, in 15 minutes and I'm already late. And somebody that I don't know, don't have any relations with, says something insultive whilst I pass, I can choose to totally and completely ignore that statement that was made by the individual.
Right.
And that serves my interest at that particular point in time because this is a person unknown to me. This is something that would take away from the 15 minutes that I have to get to the place where I'm supposed to be getting to, right? And so I can choose to totally ignore that statement. If, however, my husband were to say something insulting to me in the presence of my mother,
Right.
I may feel differently about that insulting thing that my husband said to me in the presence of my mother because I feel embarrassed because my mother is hearing my husband saying something insulting to me. I may feel angry because I feel insulted by my husband, and as a result of that, now I may choose to react in a totally different way than how I would have reacted if this guy who I don't know said something to me. So you have to own your feelings.
Right.
This guy said something insultive. My husband said something insultive. Same situation. I am receiving my husband's insult in a different way than I'm receiving the stranger's insult.
Right.
So I need to own how I feel about that particular situation, comment, or whatever it is in every situation. I have to own that, recognize that I am feeling this way based on what that individual said. But I have to take responsibility for me feeling that way and not ascribe responsibility for that to the other person.
Right. And right there, it really, I think there should be an awareness of what it takes to kind of remove yourself from a situation and evaluate your own emotions in that moment, and have the emotional intelligence to say, okay, this is how I feel right now. Why do I feel that way? How do I react? How do I execute from this place that I am at right now? Do I need time to calm down? Do I need do I need time to take a moment?
Had it been a purely cognitive process, Keddy, it would have been a little more difficult, right? But
Right.
the good thing is that physiologically, you're experiencing things as well. So your body helps you a lot. It's not just your brain who has that task. So it
Yeah.
becomes a lot easier. So
Yeah.
when you realize that your heart starts racing a little faster, and then when you realize that you're getting a little sweaty, when you realize that your breathing is getting a little faster, we all know those little signs that tells us that we're feeling a little angrier
Yeah.
than we were before the comment was made. We
Yeah.
all know that. And so it doesn't take much to catch yourself feeling that way and saying, hey, I'm feeling XYZ. Just name the feeling. Okay. It may well be that you are feeling angry,
Mhm.
but you say you're angry, but really what you're feeling is embarrassment, right? So
Yeah.
you can just own the fact that you're feeling embarrassed. It's hard for us to be able to say, I am embarrassed without saying that other person embarrassed me. But the correct thing to say is that I feel embarrassed because nobody has the power to make you feel anything.
We can't just skirt over that statement. We have to we have to sit there a little bit, because um I don't think many people are aware of that fact, right? And I want to point out what she just said is nobody, no one, not your mother, your father, your spouse, your children, your Tanisha at your workplace, your nobody has the power to make you feel anything. That is very profound, right?
Nobody has that power. And I know it sounds kind of, to many people, but it is true that nobody has the power to make you feel anything. Let's take the example that we just gave a while ago of somebody saying something insultive and that person meaning nothing to you. You don't know the person. You don't even necessarily believe that it's about you, that
Right,
the person is saying whatever they said, right?
right,
Um, and then somebody who's very close to you saying something insultive. It's the same thing, an insult, but then you feel differently about it. And you feel differently about it, one, because you have a different relationship with that individual, two, because the time and space and place and so on, made you feel differently. Like, for instance, your mother was present in one of these situations, the other situation, nobody else was around. You have to recognize that you are choosing the reactions that you have to situations based on whether it be your previous interactions, your relationships, your needs, your desires at a particular point in time, but no two sets of uh, reactions are necessarily coming from the same place. Let's take an example of a knock on the door. A knock on the door is a knock on the door, whether you are in your bed at 3 a.m., in your office at 3 p.m., whether you are in your home or in your office, whether you are in St. Lucia or in Martinique, a knock on the door is a knock on the door. But your reaction to a knock on the door is very different depending on where you are, how you're feeling at the time, or who you believe is knocking on the door, right?
Very true.
So
Yeah.
if you believe that you just stole some money and you run hiding in a little corner, and you know that police are in the community looking for you, and you hear a knock on the door, your reaction might be that of fright, fear, right?
Right.
If you're anticipating somebody to pick you up, your friend, maybe you're going on a hot date or whatever it is, and you hear a knock on the door, your reaction will be that of anxiety, maybe a little anxiety, maybe a little bit of anticipation, maybe just joy, maybe.
Yeah.
So that knock on the door clearly did not make you feel any of these things.
Right.
It's where you're at that particular point in time that made you feel whatever it is that you felt, right? And so you cannot then give the other person the power that they don't have. They don't have the power to make you feel anything. They can say anything, they can do anything. You have no control over those things. But you can choose to interpret what they say or do in a way that is more closely tied to the way that you want to continue to feel.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can choose to interpret somebody's insult as something that is indicative of who that person is.
Right.
You can choose to feel sorry for somebody who uses insults to communicate, right?
Which
Or
is a
you can
very
choose.
different reaction from what most people normally want. I think the main gist there for me is that you have as much to do with how you feel from somebody's actions as the person has to do with making you feel in any sort of way, any sort of emotion, right? I like to give this story or this analogy where a guy is in a dance hall, right? And he's dancing and, he's enjoying himself with this girl, and both of them are getting along well. And, he kind of turns his back for a little bit, and then a guy like bounces him off, right? And jostles him a little bit, maybe says, something condescending, or maybe looks at him a kind of way, And in that moment, he feels disrespected. He notices some disrespect. This is a disrespectful person. But notice how I just said that. There's a difference between feeling disrespected, noticing disrespect, and coming to the conclusion that this person is a disrespectful person, right? And so now we have two alternative realities, right? Where in one reality, he decides to feel disrespected, and he say, "Got somewhere numb. You can't touch me, so And he take a bottle and he slam behind up on the head, right? And now people screaming, people running, police come and hold them. The guy falls. The guy might be seriously injured, and next thing you know, he's in body way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in another alternative outcome, he decides, oh, this is a disrespectful person. Also, I don't even really know this girl like that. So let me just go relax or dance with somebody else, or go at my own. It's already getting kind of late. And
Absolutely.
in one scenario, he's sleeping in a jail cell. In another scenario, he's at his home. So how much power do you really want to give to this quote unquote disrespectful person in this story?
Absolutely. I really like that story for many reasons, mostly because of the way that you tell it. Because you could have chosen to say this other guy disrespects him,
right,
by brushing him and that sort of thing. You did not say that, right? And that is very, very important, because had you said that, you've already changed the story. You've already made the interpretation of the story in the interest of a violent reaction, right? But then you did not. You said what is, which is the guy said something disrespectful Yes, yes, you will feel disrespected because you have interpreted it in a way that the guy's intention was to disrespect you. Or when people say these things or do these things, it means that they're undermining me as a person. And because they're undermining me, I feel disrespected.
Mhm.
But then you chose not to say that. You indicated that the person said or did something that was disrespectful. And maybe not disrespectful is maybe not disrespectful in and of itself, but maybe did something violent or did something. Okay, let's say violent. Let's say the person did something violent, like grab the girl.
Mhm.
All right. Obviously, this is a situation where the intention of the other person may have been for violence, right?
Yeah, you wanted to start something.
He may have wanted to start a fight with you.
Mhm.
Now, if that is your intention as well, to start a fight, go ahead. But if you did not come for that particular reason, and your intention for being there has nothing to do with fighting, why then should you fall into his intention? Why should you go down the road that he's choosing to go when that was not your intention? Obviously, the fact that you were dancing and having a nice time, you came there to have a nice time. Now, mind you, it's not that easy to just walk away from a situation like that, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's not, and walking away doesn't mean that you're not feeling angry in a situation like that, right?
Right. Right.
But you have to be able to catch yourself feeling angry, catch yourself feeling disrespected, catch yourself feeling embarrassed, right? And own that feeling as something that that person didn't do to you, but something that you feel,
Right.
right? And then own that feeling, walk with your anger, calling your anger, if that's really what it is. Don't say, oh, no, no, that's all right. I cool. You angry, you angry. Yes, I'm angry. But I'm choosing not to respond in a violent way, even if that guy's intention was to be violent,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I have chosen, notwithstanding the anger that I feel right now, to respond in a way that makes me feel better at peace and prevents me from spending the night in jail.
Yeah. And in that moment, you reclaim your power. You reclaim your life.
Absolutely. Your life, literally. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's a very important message here that dealing effectively with conflict doesn't mean that you're not feeling the same level of anger that you would have felt had you not been dealing with it, had you been violent, perhaps, right? You still feel the same level of anger. You still feel the same level of emotion, whether it be disrespect or embarrassment or whatever it is that you feel. The intensity may be still that high, but just because you're thinking about it differently, your anger, one, dissipates much faster, but two, you are able to think more clearly
Right.
because you're thinking of it differently.
Yeah.
You're saying that, yes, I feel angry because I feel disrespected, but guess what? I own that feeling of disrespect. I take responsibility for it. That guy doesn't have the power to make me feel disrespected. I feel disrespected because of what I think about situations of that nature. I think disrespected because of the people who were around at the time or whatever the case may have been. And I accept that as me. It's my thing. It's not going to do with the other person.
Yeah. And I have to say, in that moment, as guys, we have some testosterone, in the bloodstream. So just the fact that, the girl saw him push you off and the girl saw that, he acted so aggressively, there's that testosterone in the back of your head that's like, yeah, boy, you have to rise up. You have to rise up, but you don't necessarily have to. You do
You
have a
don't have
choice. Yeah.
to.
You have a
You
choice
don't
out there.
have to. You feel like.
Right.
Again, how we interpret things. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You feel like it, and you're probably saying at the back of your mind, you know what? I have to teach that guy a lesson and so on. But you have to now self-talk and tell yourself, no, I don't have to. I feel like doing it.
Yeah.
again, you own it, right? Because guess what? I know that happened a lot in the time when I was counselor before comprehensive.
What's that?
You know, we found ourselves in situations when, in interacting with the guys who would often find themselves in the violent end of conflict. And you know, when we got to the point where we looked at how the other person's initiation of the whole conflict situation was really a way to control you to react in a violent way. Because they are very much aware that either you have a tendency towards violence or you have a, how you say this, weakness, right?
Right.
So they have told themselves, if I say this, Mitt gonna feel, insulted, and Mitt, keeping his hands down, he's going to punch me. So guess what? If I want him to be suspended tomorrow, I just stay in that and you will see. And of course, the weak person, and that's how we described it, right? As the weak person would respond in a way that this other person has decided that they will respond. And then, of course, the same thing that the other person had predicted, which is that you're going to punch and you're going to get suspended. That happens. And now you're on suspension. And who had control in the situation? And they go like, this other idiot. Yeah, but who gave the other idiot that much control over you? And then, it came back to, well, I did. But it's a hard place for them to come to without actually going through the situation over and over, because most people don't want to admit that the person that triggers them, well, the person who triggered something in them, that person had full control over the situation and may have well intended for that particular outcome, right?
And I think another way of phrasing that, I just want to hop in. I think another way of phrasing that is that if you do not exercise the proper conflict management, you become vulnerable to control. And that's a hefty point.
Absolutely. Because you see, you're always given a certain measure of control over the choices that you make. We always have that measure of control. When we don't exercise that measure of control, we've given it over to somebody else. And that other person now is in full control, right?
Yeah.
Like the example that we gave a little earlier on of walking down the street, going to a meeting that you have in 15 minutes. You know what your intention is for walking down that road, right? And then if you continuously remember what your intention is, you're not going to get distracted by every little thing that happens. Why is it that the barking dog doesn't make you run after it and send stones at it and start beating it up? Why? Because the barking dog doesn't have any control over your actions. Why is it that the person that you have determined in your mind has a mental illness, right? If that person just says things at the side of the road, why don't you take it personally? Because you've already said, oh, that's somebody who's mentally ill, I can just pass them and so on. Why is it that somebody who you don't know at all is calling a name that you don't know at all and is insulting that name? It doesn't bother you at all.
Right.
Has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
But that other person who says something the same way on the side of the road, and then looked you in the eye whilst they were saying it, and then whatever they said is insultive, suddenly gets you so angry that you now have to teach that person a lesson. How different is what that person said, from the dog barking or the person with mental illness acting up, right?
Yeah.
Or the person that you don't know shouting. In all of these scenarios, the dog and the other two people, they just made a sound on the other side of the road.
Yeah. And you decided that, okay, at one point in the process, you were deciding, okay, this is worth my emotional reaction. This is, I have to, rise up, and I think that level of intentionality, in terms of managing those emotions, really will go a long way towards us getting better at managing conflict.
Eventually, because what's going to happen is that you will at first be making a conscious effort, to ask yourself, but why am I reacting in that particular way? Okay, I can choose not to react in that particular way. And it might be far into the process when you catch yourself there already. But the more you practice it, is the more you're going to get used to doing it that way. And so before you actually respond at all, you are finding yourself choosing not to respond in a way that is violent, right? So violence is a choice, conflict is normal. And if you choose violence, you know that there are consequences of violence that I don't think at any point in time, those repercussions or consequences are desirable. Most times, the consequences of violence are undesirable. So you know that already to begin with. So you can choose, right, to deal with things in a way that do not give you the consequences of a violent choice, right? So that is the difference that effective conflict management makes for you. It makes you aware that you have a choice in every situation,
Right. I have a
right?
question for you.
And yes, go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I'm just saying that it makes you very much aware that you have a choice in every situation, and it also does not tie you to any particular set of choices so as to be able to get to what you would refer to as a resolution.
Right. It gives you
Your
more
question.
control, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Um, so, and this question is coming out of left field a little bit, but on the last episode, I was privileged to sit with Mrs. Faisal, who's an attorney, and we talked a little bit about the justice system in St. Lucia and prisoners on remand or on pretrial, and I wonder. And I'm not necessarily expecting you to know this, but I just want to throw this question out there. I wonder if prisoners are given some sort of conflict management classes or courses while they're at the correctional facility. I think it would go a long way for persons, especially those convicted for violent crime, maybe a stabbing or some sort of aggravated assault. In the process of their rehabilitation, because that's what a correctional facility should be for, right? In the process of their rehabilitation, I would wonder if we are providing them some sort of conflict management material or courses so that they can change the way they address conflict.
I'm aware that there are a few programs that are ongoing. I can't speak to the content of those programs because I
Okay.
don't really know, but I'm aware that there are some counseling and other social-based programs ongoing with prisoners.
Okay.
And I think
Yeah.
that would be quite useful because sometimes um, people are not necessarily ready to learn how to deal with things in a non-violent manner until they are suffering or facing the consequences of their violent choice.
All right.
Right? Some people. Of course, that's not the case with every individual. Some perhaps will never get to the understanding that they had a choice in the matter. But as long as people are open to hearing and seeing and, interpreting things differently, then they can reclaim the power that they have in making a choice that is different from the violent choices that they've made in the past, right? And that is one of the fundamental things about human nature. We are able to change with new information. We are able to do things differently when we learn things differently. We can also unlearn things that we've learned and, learn new things, replace these new things, these old things that were not necessarily helpful, with the new helpful things. And all of us have that capacity. But then, so as to be able to tap into that capacity, we just need to be open.
Right. Right.
And being open is, an understanding that I don't have the complete and how you say this, absolute truth. You see?
That's a whole discussion right there.
But you see, it's fundamental to this whole conflict management thing, because
right.
usually when I have those sessions about boundary setting for conflict resolution, which is the kind of thing that I like to do, we speak to, first and foremost, understanding the difference between truth and belief. And understanding that our brains do not make a distinction between the two.
Right. Right. Basically, people forget that when we are receiving information, it's going through a filter. And that filter could be our emotional state at the time, how tired we are, how hungry we are, our political persuasions, or our culture, and all these things contribute to the filter that we're pushing information coming in through.
And sometimes, way past that filter, Keddy, when we believe something, we act and we feel in a way that is consistent with that belief, as if that belief were truth. Right?
Yes.
So say, for instance, a wife believes that her husband is cheating on her. Even if the husband may not be cheating on her, in her mind, it is so. And so everything that she says and feels from that point on will be as if that thing that she believes were true.
Right.
And that is the case with every single person. Our brains do not make a distinction between what is true and what we believe, because as long as we believe it, it becomes our truth. So because it has become your truth, that is what you are going to be operating from. So key to understanding effective conflict management is understanding that what you believe may not necessarily be the truth. This is a very humbling place to be, but it's a very necessary place to be.
Right.
That what I believe is what I have to own as mine. That's what I believe. I have to take ownership of that. That's my truth, because it is something that I believe.
Right. Doesn't your personality
the truth?
Right. Doesn't your personality make that concept more difficult or easier to grasp, just determined by your temperament? Because I could see some people.
It's your openness, not your entire personality.
Okay.
It's just your openness. So if you're an open person, you are more likely to understand that concept. If you're a humble person, you're more likely to accept that. Right?
Right.
But if you're not a humble person and you're not an open person, you're not going to accept that. Whether you have a sweet personality or any type of personality that you have. So it's just those two simple things, openness and humility. Right? So if you're open and humble, you will recognize that there are a system of beliefs that I have that are based on me, what I choose to believe. And they're not necessarily true. They're not necessarily true. Because if I believe that you're a pencil, and even if I want to continue to believe that from now until doomsday, you don't become a pencil. Right? But I will interact with you as if you were a pencil, because that is my truth. Right?
Yeah.
But then I have to understand that when I take you and I put your head over a piece of paper and I don't see something written, that it is because I have called you a pencil, because I have treated you like a pencil. But it isn't that you are.
I just made it up. I created the pencil, but it's not a real pencil.
That's the whole
There is
point.
no pencil.
Right? So you have to understand that what you believe and what is truth may be different.
Okay.
Right? And so if you understand that and you know that, it also means that you will understand and know that what the other person believes is not necessarily the truth either. Right? And so you give that person the same permission that you give yourself for believing something that is not completely truthful. You can also give the other person permission to believe something that isn't really truthful. It's okay if you believe that I am an idiot. That doesn't make me an idiot.
Right.
You're entitled to that belief. You know, there's sometimes I used to say when I was a little more proud. I think, I'm not that proud anymore. When I used to be a little more arrogant, I used to say, I want some people not to like me. Because if they like me, it means that something is inherently wrong with me. Because the way they are and the way they think, they can't like me, because if they like me, it means that I'm like them. But of course, Keddy, I'm not that arrogant anymore. But the thing is, you need to understand that that other person is operating from their own truth,
right.
Which may not necessarily be the truth that you and I operate from.
Yeah, just another version.
Just another version. And they're entitled to it in the same way that you're entitled to your distorted truth.
Right. And that just brings me to, there are many times where I may be speaking to somebody and they express a thought or opinion that isn't very accurate to me, right? To me, I could think of many reasons why the thought or opinion that they're really ready to die on the hill for is wrong. And you have to I kind of take a moment to kind of digest, is there really a benefit to trying to show this person the error in this thought? Or is there really a benefit in trying to push into some sort of new conflict with this person over this idea that they're completely bought into? And sometimes the answer to that is no, not really. And
it's not worth it. Because you know what? You could say whatever you want, because it is that person's truth. There's nothing that you can do about it. And then sometimes you have to ask yourself, who appointed me to be the healer of that person's mind? Sometimes you can hear somebody say something that you totally agree with and just have a laugh.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah,
because you're not appointed to heal their minds and to get them to start thinking an entirely different way. It's okay if they feel that way. They're entitled to being in the same way that you are.
Yeah. So, and that's something, I mean, I think for me, that's generally a part of my personality overall. But I think there are other ways that as I've gotten a bit older over the years, I've learned to apply that same approach to other things as well, which does not mean that you hold back on expressing your relevant thoughts and opinions where you need to share them. But it just means that you now have control over how much of your energy you're using, depending on
Absolutely.
yeah.
And how far you go with it. Because
Yeah.
you can continue with like say for instance, an argument. You can continue with an argument as long as you realize that it is not evolving into something violent. You know,
Yeah.
if we're having a difference of opinion and it's neither here nor there, we're just enjoying sharing different opinions on the same thing, we can continue along.
Yeah.
There's no harm in that. But if you realize that the other person is beginning to take it personally, maybe it was not your intention to insult the person, but the person interpreted something that you said in an insultive way, and it's going in a different direction. You can choose at that particular point in time to just do it differently, stop the conversation, make light of it, move to a different topic, leave the physical place, the setting. In other words, just de-escalate the situation because you realize, okay, this is going somewhere where I did not intend for it to go. Sometimes somebody says something and the intention is to have been silly, just a joke, right?
Right.
And then it becomes something because again, you don't have control over how you make the other person feel, right? And so to you, it was just a joke, but the other person interprets it, in an insultive way. Maybe it's because that person had an experience in life that was very embarrassing and it was in line of that same thing. So when you said that, it triggered the embarrassment that the person felt some time ago and so on. And so they continue to feel embarrassed and now they're angry at you because they say you are the one who embarrassed them and so on. So when you realize that the other person is feeling embarrassed or angry, and has sometimes even voiced that they're feeling angry, then you know that was not your intention. You at this point cannot convince them that that was not your intention. Don't even try to. You can either apologize if you feel that that's what you need to at the time, or leave the situation. Find a way of de-escalating it.
Yes.
There are some people that tell you, sometimes you can just be nice and say, oh, that's not really what I meant, and end it. You can do that. You can choose to do that because it's not worth it. You don't want to lose a friend over that. Right? So you can choose at that point to just say something or do something that will take the situation back to the pre-conflictive state, or leave it there because over time the anger or whatever associated with that particular conflict might cease, and then you can continue the relationship that you have with that individual outside of that conflicted situation. Right?
Yeah. Now I know we're really approaching our time, and we have I know you have a relatively tight schedule today. One more thing, and I'm gonna give you the opportunity to tell the folks, viewers and listeners, anything else that you really want to emphasize. But do you think there is a difference in terms of skill at conflict management across the genders? I know you're laughing because guys, in prepared for this episode, I asked that same question in a different way. That's why she's laughing.
Right. So I believe that again, men and women are not homogeneous groups. In other words, not all men are the same and not all women are the same.
Right.
There is a popular belief that women are better able at managing conflicts than men are. I don't necessarily know that that is the case. I know, however, that women tend to sit with discomfort better generally than men as a group. And maybe it's because physiologically we have to sit with discomforts a lot. 9 months of a baby growing inside a woman is not something that is the most comfortable of experiences, but it is the type of experience that a woman learns to sit with until the 9 months. She has to be patient until such time that the baby is delivered. And even in having that baby for the next few months where she has to be breastfeeding and, forgetting about her own needs sometimes so as to respond to that child's needs, it teaches her, it forces her. And in the process, she learns how to be able to sit with a certain level of discomfort. So it would not be surprising that that very ability is transferred in her interactions with other people, that she is able to experience a greater level of comfort in an uncomfortable situation, right? And so being in a conflict is really an uncomfortable situation. And so women's tolerance of that kind of process might be a little better, it is true. But I don't know that for sure, because I also know that there are a lot of women who do not deal with conflict as well as some men do. And of course, there is the other concept with reference to men, which I shared with you in the earlier discussion, that men tend to be a lot more focused. So when they're engaged in one task, they can give all their attention and energy to that one task and forget about the others for a little while. So they are very good at compartmentalizing. So it means that if men learn how to be able to effectively manage conflict, that there is a possibility that they can be even better at managing conflict than women can, because of the fact that they are able to focus so exclusively on one thing, which conflict management really can benefit from, your ability to focus on, okay, what is my task? What am I going towards? Is this going to get me there? No, it's not going to get me there. So I can, literally ignore it or take a different route to get me where I actually want to get to. So I don't know that I would be comfortable saying that any sex, any male or female, is better at managing conflicts than other. I'm certain there are certain studies, right? Some research has gone into that, and some conclusions that have been drawn based on those bits of research. But I don't know that I would use this kind of carte blanche statement that women are better at resolving conflicts than men. I think that there is merit to looking at both sides, and either one of them in certain circumstances can show greater ability at resolving conflict than the other.
Yeah, and I really want to take a moment to encourage people, single people out there looking for a spouse or a life partner, to kind of pay attention to how you guys are resolving conflicts. Like take a moment to intentionally think about how you guys work through things, because you will have to over and over again. So that just occurred to me to mention that to you guys. So aside from that, and I think that was very well said on the gender question there. I think as guys, we do have a slight disadvantage when it comes to our makeup. We have the testosterone. Testosterone makes people more aggressive, generally, and more competitive in some ways. And we're built like guys tend to be more prone to violence. We're built. We think we man and we can just walk around hitting people.
You know, Keddy, I
So,
can't really be in the same room or the same forum with you and hear you say that and not react. I mean,
yeah.
I
Okay.
so can't. No, because
Help me out. Help me out.
you see, very often people use that as an excuse
Mhm,
to give men permission to react violently.
okay.
Yes, you have testosterone, but um, you're a person,
Mhm,
and every single one of us has hormones,
right.
and every single one of us is subject to feelings of every sort, and every single one of us has we've been given a level of control
Right.
over those emotions. And so just because I feel something doesn't mean that I have to respond in a particular way. And
Yeah.
throughout our discussion, we basically were saying the same thing,
Right.
that if somebody does something and I feel angry, I can own my anger because I feel angry. That doesn't, the intensity of your anger does not give you any right to respond in a violent way.
Right.
So if you have a man and you have a woman, and the man and the woman are exposed to the same thing, the intensity of the man's anger might be a little higher than the intensity of the woman's anger. But guess what? They're both anger,
Mhm,
right? And just because your anger is a little more intense at a particular point in time, it doesn't give you a right to respond in any violent way.
right. Right.
Because no matter what it is, you have a choice in how you respond. And you can choose a violent response, knowing that the violent response comes with consequences. You can choose a less violent response, right? And if you choose that less violent response, you are more likely to get to a desirable outcome. So I'm not going to sit with anybody
No, no, no.
who would make a statement, who would suggest at all to men that, oh boy, I understand why you
No, no,
reacted
no,
in
no,
that
no.
violent way. It's
So
not you, it's,
yeah,
nah.
I think I could see how I was coming across that way, but I want to make clear that it was not my intention to in any way excuse violent behavior at all. I was just saying that in terms of the gender comparison in regarding conflict management, I could see how that might just be an additional roadblock, but not in any way an excuse to execute on any sort of emotion or react in any conflict in a violent way. So, folks, I want to be clear about that. but thank you for helping me clarify that and dive into that a bit more. Yeah. But aside from that, is there anything else that you wanted to hash out before we leave?
Just that, that in as much as conflict is a very normal part of life, violence isn't.
Okay.
And the violence is a choice.
Right.
And we can choose to manage conflict in a way that still allows us to be able to, one, use the conflict in a positive way, because I think that we said that kind of, en passant in the
Mhm.
discussion,
Yeah.
but conflict can also be very useful.
Right.
In fact, a lot of the growth that we have made as humans have come out of conflict, right? And so we can be grateful for an opportunity to express in a healthy way a difference in opinion. Because through that expression of the difference in opinion, you and the other person with whom you're conversing may have an opportunity to grow.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's very well said. And yeah, I do believe at the top of the episode, I mentioned that conflict is not a bad thing. But I don't think that we really pointed out that it can also be a good thing. So I want to thank you for bringing that up for sure. And folks, let me tell you guys, as always, I have to let you know, we will be back on April 12th. April 12th. So between then and now, I hope that you stay safe, you wear a mask, get some exercise, eat some good food, take care of yourself. Miss Janey, I appreciate you joining me on this episode so much. Guys, I didn't mention this, but me and Miss Janey talking like this is from way back, from Viewfort Compre days. Compre people, if you're watching this, I remember being 17 in the counselor's office, sitting down with Miss Janey, talking about life and the universe and all the people in it.
Well, the pleasure is all mine as well. Thank you so much for having me on your show. All the best.
Thank you. So, folks, once again, bye for now. Take it easy.